Hey, welcome to the Great Updraft. You're here with Ross. I make weekly videos talking about tools for self-transformation, so do subscribe to my channel to stay up to date and head to my website for articles, courses, and ebooks. So the topic of today's video is the 7 qualities of a self-transformed person. So when I talk about self-transformation, my way of thinking about it is very high level. Often in self-help circles, people tend to focus on one of these aspects that I'm going to talk about. So maybe they talk about financial transformation, achieving transformation in your financial life, or they maybe talk about transforming your relationship with other people, whether that's a partner or family or your friends or colleagues. Or they maybe talk about health transformation, losing weight, becoming a person with good health habits and with basically the mindset of a healthy person. And that's all great. However, if we want true self-transformation and we want it to be integral, we want it to be whole, we want it to be holistic, as is often said, then these 7 areas are a really good guide to help us aim towards that. And what I'm going to lay out here is it's an ideal. It's like an avatar or a profile or a certain ideal that we're never really going to reach. Well, we may do, but then we just find more areas to work on. And it's a never-ending process, really. And this is absolutely not exhaustive at all. I'm just going to cover the main ideas here, the main areas where I think we need to really put our attention on in the process of self-transformation. But I'll get on to an even broader view at the end. So do stick around for that, and that will really help put this all in context as well. So let's get on to a brief summary now of the 7 qualities of a self-transformed person. And then we'll go into each of these in detail. So the 7 qualities. Quality number 1 is enacting a benevolent vision. So what that basically means is that most of your life, and this would ideally be your career, is spent dedicated to some sort of cause that is bigger than yourself, that is deliberately, positively impacting the world in a way that's meaningful and fulfilling for you. The second quality is our interpersonal life. So we want high quality friendships, we want high quality family life, we want a high quality partner or wife or husband or whatever it may be. And we also want to have these interpersonal skills that we can apply to perhaps not our close relationships, but our more extended circle of people that we have in our life, like colleagues and bosses and so on. We want to learn those skills so that we can successfully manage the social marketplace, as it were. And that, as you'll find out, these areas are a really big area of potential growth for us. The third area is spirituality, which is often one that is taken to be the number 1 area, it's an absolutely vital area, but it's not the only one. And actually, what I've come across in my journey in spirituality is that I've met many people with a very deep spiritual connection, and they've really helped me in my journey, but they do not have these other areas of their life particularly well developed. And in a certain sense, their spirituality, it does count for a lot, but when it isn't backed up by these other areas, it can really hinder your spiritual life. So we want to put spirituality into this context of these other pillars. And when I say spirituality, I just mean going from your limited human identity to realizing your deepest nature and embodying that deepest nature in your life. So it's a very broad definition. Number 4 is self-mastery. What do I mean by self-mastery? What I mean by this is is mastering ourselves psychologically and sort of optimizing our actions and behavior based on the knowledge we have of ourselves. So I'm going to get into this in more detail later in the video, but a small sample of areas to self-master, or areas we can find self-mastery in, would be fears, our strong points, our unique aspects of our personality, our emotional life, our defense mechanisms, our trauma, our bad habits and addictions, and many more. We'll get to those. It's an absolutely vital area. And this is actually a huge area of like the typical self-help work, and it's a very good thing it is. Number 5 is our health. So do not want to discount health. I'm talking physical health, and I'm also talking mental health. So it's not just one or the other, it's both. And brought together with these other pillars, it's a really big bonus to have that. Moving on to number 6, financial abundance. So again, I always link this with spirituality, because what I've observed in the spiritual field, let's say, is a sort of rejection of money and financial abundance. And I've learned the hard way that is not a good strategy to go by. And there's a quote I really love that I'm going to get into more later in the video, that is to do with our barns overflowing and our barrels filled with new wine. In other words, we want to have more than enough money that we need. We want to have all the resources we need to fulfill our life's calling and to reach our highest potential. And in the world today, money is the intermediary. It's the tool, it's the instrument we use to acquire things that we don't have. And so financial abundance is a really important part of that. And again, this is one that's often taken to be, if not but one of the big areas of self-transformation. And it's true, but often people miss out number 1, enacting a benevolent vision. How are we obtaining our money, for example? So we're going to link all these together. And finally, the final quality that we're going to look at is mastery. What I mean by mastery, this is not the same as self-mastery, although it's quite related. Mastery is really, how do we get exceptionally good at certain areas of life? So how do we get exceptionally good at science? How do we get exceptionally good at art? How do we get exceptionally good at being in our profession, in our professional life? And how do we get so good that we can get to a point where we have a fulfilling career and we have an abundant career? And that I am a huge learning buff, so this is really something that I'm very passionate about. So we'll get to that later. Let's go back to the first area though, or the first quality, which is enacting a benevolent vision. Just really central part to being a self-transformed person is a vision for how we're impacting other people and how we're improving our lives, and linking that to our deepest values, our deepest strengths, and our innate sort of curiosity, our innate... Robert Greene often talks about our primary instinct. What's that thing that we are, that sort of defines us, and it's like a quality that we have. And how do we bring that into the world? How do we optimize that in service of the world? And to get you in touch with exactly what I mean by this, I want you to look at your current vision that you have for yourself. What vision do you have of your potential as a human being? What vision do you have in terms of your financial life? What vision do you have for your career? And I want you to think if that is a vision that actually does genuine good for the world, or if it is actually sort of selfishly motivated. And what I would suggest is that we want to channel our efforts. We want to get to the stage where we're improving the world in a way that's very meaningful for us, and genuinely helps move the world forward, and it helps move other people forward. And if our vision isn't there, if it's not at that level, then I'm not condemning you, but the type of vision that I'm talking about is way above that. These visions of, becoming rich, becoming famous, having a certain amount of, having a certain image, those are fine, but they're actually kind of shallow and short-sighted. And what we want to aim for something benevolent, something aspirational. And things that get in the way of this vision are activities that directly or indirectly harm other people. So you can look at your career and where you spend your time, and the areas or the things that you need to do in order to enact your current vision, whether those are directly or indirectly harming other people. And the idea is to minimize those and to really put our efforts towards things that are genuinely uplifting other people. Another important component of this vision is it's coming from you, like it's something authentic and genuine for you. Not that you have to be self-employed, you have to run your own business and everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. That's not what I'm saying necessarily, but it's something that you're deeply connected with and it's authentic to you. And if that's the case, then you're going to put your all into it. You're going to give the best gifts that you can to the world. And that's what we want. That's what we want in a self-transformed person. And if we look at highly developed people that are revered throughout history, their disposition is to work for the benefit of all of life, for other people, for the planet, for animals, for society, for the government, for improving this whole human drama that's unfolding, to take that forward and to make it better and to clean it up. And actually, when you reach high levels of development, I'll talk a lot about the levels of development in human beings in all their guises. When we reach these higher levels, our nature actually becomes benevolence, and we see that that's the best way to go, and that's like an innate desire of the human being at those levels. So, and as well, working towards this benevolent vision, it covers many other areas. It covers the financial part, it covers the interpersonal part as well, because, well, the financial part should be taken care of if we have a career based on a benevolent vision that's really serving the world. And the interpersonal part is very much impacted there. It also works on our morals and ethics, because it requires us to think of really what are we doing, what are we putting into the world, where are we dedicating our time and energy. And it also requires a lot of creativity and forward thinking. So that is enacting a benevolent vision, and that's something you can start working on right now. Let's get to quality 2 in some more detail then. And this is our interpersonal. So as I mentioned, this is like a huge area for growth. And let's start with our intimate relationship. Really, the reason I'm talking about interpersonal here is that our closest relationships are a very strong reflection of who we are. And often, when I talk about, I've got a partner that we've been together for several years now. When I talk about our relationship to people, I just call it a mirror. Like it's a mirror for both of us. And it's a mirror of sometimes our not so good parts. Sometimes it's a mirror of our very good parts, and sometimes it's somewhere in between. But everything that happens in especially our intimate relationship it's a function of us. It's a function of the quality of our consciousness, of the quality of who we are as a human being. And the same goes for friendships as well. We want to optimize our friendships, both in a kind of selfish way. In a way, we want to be with people who are on the same wavelength. We want to be with people who challenge us. We want to be with people we have a deep connection and we have deep, authentic communication with. And that's kind of in a selfish way, because that helps us to grow and self-transform further. But also, it refines who we are as a person, and having the mirrors of highly developed friends that we can resonate with, that actually helps us be better people, and it helps us, enact a vision, for example. It helps us refine who we are as people and act more skillfully and clean up our old habits and so on. Another huge area of the interpersonal part is our family. A lot could be said about family, and I'm going to have to talk a lot more about family in future, but again, it is a very much a reflection of who we are. You know, the quality of the emotions and the quality of the thoughts and the desires and just the moment to moment relationships we maintain with our family members is a really strong reflection of who we are. And it's their way of treating us is also a very strong reflection of who we are. And often what I've seen in my self-transformation process is that my basement, or like the lower parts of me that I struggle with the most, are often, they're sort of intertwined with my family. Not to necessarily say my family embody them, although that is true in certain cases, but that my family often see me, they see those in me more than I can myself. And yeah, it really acts as a very strong mirror for us. And so the interpersonal thing is both, it's for us and it's for our own self-transformation, but it's also helps us to refine ourselves and be better people for everyone else that we come across. And really this comes into, it's really a spectrum of selflessness, or selfishness versus selflessness. It's like, on that spectrum, where are we? And often in the interpersonal realm, we can get a very good sense of that. So again, another area we can work on right away, and I'll be talking a lot about in future. Let's get on to area number 3 then, which is spirituality. So to put this into a big context, if we look at psychological literature, and this is maybe a strange place to start for spirituality for many people, but for me it makes a lot of sense. If you look at psychological literature, what the literature says is that we basically start off in unconscious unity with everything that's going on in our awareness. So we don't distinguish ourselves from the room around us. We don't distinguish our body from even our parents or our family members. The outside world doesn't exist separate from us. It is us. However, we're not really conscious of this in our early years, our earliest months and years. This is what's called pre-egoic, and we don't have a sense of identity yet. What then happens is, in childhood, slowly, sort of up until ages 5, 6, 7, 8, what happens is we develop a strong sense of identity, and we have a very active mental life, and this mental life really enforces our sense of identity and our sense of being a certain person. And yeah, in our childhood, this is laid down, and all our habits associated with being this separate person that's apparently separate from everything and everyone else, those are all laid down. And what helps, this isn't to say we need to go back to being babies. That's not what I'm saying. All these patterns, they help us to operate as human beings, and they help us to live an adult life, essentially, and to play the game of life, as it were. So what spirituality is then, it's taking this sort of this cage or this limited identity we have, this sense of separation, this sense of, for me, is I am Ross, right? I am this person. It's taking that and it's going beyond that and realizing that underlying awareness, that underlying unity that we were in a sense in contact with when we were in our youngest years, our youngest months of life, that is available, and that's actually our truest, deepest nature. And that goes to ever deepening levels. So I've just described sort of one phase in the process, let's say, but it's an ever deeper awareness and embodiment of this fundamental unity with God or Allah or the ground of being. And this is enlightenment, this is awakening. As I said, I've met people who have a very deep spiritual life, and they're obviously connected to something far beyond this limited identity, and they've seen beyond the illusion of our separate identity, but they're quite obnoxious in many cases. They they don't have like a sense of enacting a powerful vision in life, and they maybe do work that is below their potential, and that makes them miserable, to be frank. They don't have an abundant financial life. They don't know their identity on like the psychological level, even though they've transcended it. They still, as I said, it's a never ending process. So I don't want to say, oh, this person has it and this person don't, but I can see that they've not done a lot of that work that's necessary there, and that becomes an issue. And often, if we have these big holes in other areas of our lives, especially if we have several of them, spirituality can actually become like a crutch, and it can become like an escape. You know, we've got the term spiritual bypassing to describe this, and we start justifying our lack or our scarcity or our underdevelopment in these other 6 pillars that I'm talking about. We use that as a way to justify that, and that's not, we don't want that. We want this spirituality to be a really important pillar, one of the key pillars, but we also want to infuse our entire life with it, and also infuse spirituality with the rest of our life. And that's why I've put it in as just one of these pillars. It's just one. It's not like the main course, and everything else is like a side show. And I've seen that people who believe like that or believe in that often have a lot of dysfunction, and I see it in myself actually, because I've been through a period of that myself. Developing a deep spiritual life, it basically involves serious, meditation, yoga, contemplation, reading, retreats, and really bringing the monastery into our lives and applying these spiritual practices all the time, as much as we can, until these deep insights about our deeper identities beyond our separate sense of self actually become like permanent parts of our identity, and they become permanent places where we live. And it's, we don't have to do all of those things. Sometimes it's about choosing, I'm going to do meditation, I'm going to do yoga, I'm going to do a lot of contemplation work, whatever it is, but we need to put that work in. And certainly I'll be talking about this a lot more in future. Moving on then to the 4th pillar of self-transformation, and this is self-mastery. Oh boy, I really love this topic, because I'm a bit of a self-mastery nut, let's say, although I've got a lot of work to do. So yeah, this is to get to know our personality traits and our sticking points and our positive points, our pain points, and our psychology to a very, very high degree. And then we want to use that to basically refine who we are as people, and to be more productive, to be better people, to be able to put our energy towards what we need and not get in the way of ourselves. And this all falls under self-mastery. And I'm just going to take a selection of, first of all, the unproductive areas of our psychology, and then a selection of the productive ones. And this will give you a really big idea of what self-mastery entails. It's a really huge area. So a small selection of our unproductive areas are fears. What are we afraid of? What is it that stops us enacting these visions or goals? Or what is it that keeps us stuck in a certain identity and certain thought patterns? Our sticking points, so our, those areas that we struggle with and that we've battled with for years and that keep coming up again and again in our lives. Loneliness. So how do we deal with loneliness? Do we deal with it in a productive way as a tool for self-knowledge and self-transformation, or does it bring up a lot of mourning and neediness? Our emotions. So what are the quality of our emotions? What emotions do we habitually feel, and how do we deal with our negative emotions, and how are we transforming our emotional life? Our defense mechanisms. So what are those sneaky mechanisms that we have for denying or masking our ego, or trying to like defend our ego from the outside world? Our blind spots. What are the ideas and the patterns that we have that we can't see, but they limit us, and they really limit how we see the world and how we see ourselves? Trauma, things that we've been through that cause sort of emotional blockages, and they cause dysfunctional behavior patterns, and they cause neediness in relationships and so on. Trauma is a very huge field. Bad habits, so maybe it's phone addiction, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's television, maybe it's sugar, maybe it's coffee, maybe it's pornography. Could be many of bad habits. But again, this is a huge area for self-transformation, and I've, especially in say the last 5 years, I've experienced enormous transformation just by eliminating my bad habits and my less than optimal addictions. And then final one is our self-esteem. I mean, I've put this in the unproductive section because it's often used in a negative way. Oh, he has bad self-esteem, we need to improve our self-esteem. So it's like this implication is that it's down. It doesn't have to be like that, but I've just fallen into putting it in the unproductive section. So this is really about, how do we see ourselves? How do we talk to ourselves? What do we love ourselves? Do we practice self-love, or do we speak negatively to ourselves and practice hatred while adoring other people and putting other people on a pedestal? So it's about having a healthy relationship to our sense of self, and this is obviously a huge component of our psychology and self-mastery. We're done with the negative stuff now, so let's look at our productive areas where the good areas that we can find self-mastery in. Our unique aspects, those things that make us stand out, those qualities that other people notice us for, make us unique and make us outstanding in certain areas of life. Our innate dispositions and strengths. One of those for me is maths. It's always been my innate, don't know where it came from, and I've had to work very hard to cultivate that, but from a very young age I had a very strong like understanding of numbers, and yeah, couldn't really put my finger on it, but we all have those. We want to really get to know those. Our passion, what are we passionate about? What gets us inspired? Our top values, what are the things that the biggest ideas or the biggest ideals we have? What are the most high quality ideals that we have for ourselves in life and what we're here to do? We want to get to know those so that we can, say, base our grand vision on that. And other areas like productivity, achieving goals and setting routines. This is an area of self-mastery because time is a very valuable resource for us. And if we can't get ourselves to consistently produce work in service of a vision, in service of a project that we're that is expressing our passion, for example, then we're not going to feel the sense of creativity and the sense of contribution that we could feel if we had those good habits and productive routines in place. So this is another area I talk about, is productivity. Great, that's the self-mastery component. Let's move on to the fifth component of a self-transformed person, which is health. So this one's going to be a little bit shorter than the other ones, but by no means is it any less important. First of all is physical health. That's one of the components to health, and things like giving our body the vitamins and minerals it needs, being of a healthy weight, having good food habits, having knowledge of food and diet. All this is really important nowadays, where it's actually cheaper and easier to eat bad food than it is to give your human machine the things it needs to flourish. Exercise, do we get the exercise we need? Do we have sticking points that hold us back and they damage our health? Like, and are there certain food addictions that we have. I think we can all relate to that. And really building a platform beyond the mainstream in terms of our health habits, because sadly, despite all the scientific knowledge about food and nutrition, which is always expanding, in general, the people's health is quite poor in Western society. So we want to build a platform beyond that, and all the things that I've talked about above will help you to do that. Mental health. So yeah, mental health comes into these other qualities as well, but things like healing trauma, rewiring our mental patterns, managing our dopamine intake, for example, that has a big effect on our physical health and energy levels too. But also it's very mentally related, because it's to do with our need for instant gratification. It's to do with our inability to feel our emotions and so on. And also areas like skillfully dealing with our negative emotions and transforming those, and having those being an area of self-knowledge, a source of self-knowledge for us. So health, big, huge area there. Quality 6, the penultimate area, but wow, this is a very, very important area. Financial abundance. There's a quote from the Bible that I really resonate with, and let me just quote that to you. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. So this is this is almost like the emotion you feel towards your financial life. This is like, how does it feel when you imagine your financial life, when you picture it, when you're living it? How does it feel? And there's this sensation of abundance. That's what we really want. And as I said, sometimes this is like portrayed as the only pillar in our lives, and sometimes it's portrayed as like the bottom, and it's like we don't want to live in financial abundance. Money is evil and all this, and that we have to get the middle ground. We have to see where our scarcity mindsets are with money. This is a huge area of self-mastery, actually, but it deserves a whole category of its own. Money, in terms of like the history of humanity and the history of our family and the history of our identity, money is like a huge, how can I describe it? It's like a huge pain point for humanity, let's say, because money is inevitably tied to our quality of life. It's tied to historical trends like starvation and war and just scarcity in general. It has a very strong component of scarcity and abundance, money does. And so it's a really huge area of self-mastery. And if we can live an abundant financial life where we have our needs met, we have more than enough money we need, and we're obtaining our money from projects and jobs and a career that fulfills us and gives to the world, then that is like the perfect place. And that's what I advocate here at the Great Updraft. Our family is like, for me, family is very much connected with money, because I was imprinted in childhood with a lot of very bad attitudes towards money and ideas about, say, how difficult it is to earn money, and how money is like this kind of burden. It's like something to be afraid of, and something to essentially, it was a very unhealthy relationship to money in my childhood. And I've picked that up, and it's been a really enormous ongoing area of mass self-transformation, is to develop an abundant mindset with money. And so I'm going to talk about money a lot, and it comes through in everything else that I talk about. And as well, if even if you have like an abundant financial life, but you don't incorporate these other pillars, then that's still not enough for me to be a self-transformed person, because again, like a huge component of self-transformation is doing something for the world that is genuinely productive for other people. And if we obtain our money in not so ethical and not so clean ways, let's say, and that's a huge spectrum, but a lot of general work in society is not done to improve the world and to have us obtain money in a functional, healthy way, then it's still a huge area of growth for us, because we need to find a way to incorporate that abundance and that giving into our financial life. And also, as I've mentioned, a dysfunctional relationship with money is a huge potential area for growth, an enormous potential, because again, it envelops these other areas of our life, and it often goes to like our fears, and it goes to like the very primitive desires and motivations and fears and blockages within us, our money life. So yeah, hugely important component of being a self-transformed person is having this very abundant disposition towards money and having our financial needs met in a way that's productive and helpful for the world. And now it's time for the final quality, which might be my favorite, and that is mastery. And what I'm talking about here with mastery is it's really learning. It's how do we become outstanding in one or more areas of life? How do we reach really high levels where we're able to produce really good quality work? We're able to push fields forward. We're able to give people insights, and we're able to push our human understanding to new levels. And this is, again, it's tied to many of these other pillars actually, because financial abundance is very much like coupled with mastery, because if we can produce high work and we have a lot of expertise in a field, we're very likely to be rewarded for that in a way that's going to satisfy our financial needs. We can also enact a vision by using our skills. So we could have a vision, and then if we know how to get the skills or knowledge or know-how that we need to enact that, then yeah, we'll be able to do that. And learning is just a very fundamental part of that. And I guess developing mastery in one or more areas of our life, not only is it extraordinarily fulfilling, but it's also a huge area for potential self-transformation, because we need to put good habits in place. We need to know our sticking points. We need to overcome bad habits. We need to learn how to learn. We need to instill ourselves with good mindsets. We need to develop a long time frame. We need to know how to delay gratification in this process. So all those are, in and of itself, is a huge area for growth. And this is an area in life that although I've always been a very capable learner, I was never really taught how to learn and how real long-term competency is gained. In school, for example, our learning, even if we get really good grades, I got very good grades. I went to university and I've met many people who were the same. Even if we get really good grades, it doesn't mean that we know how to learn. It doesn't mean that we have the mastery mindset that I promote. So again, I'm really excited to share what I know about this and have you find self-transformation in your learning. So let's bring all this together then. I've talked about what I think are the 7 most important pillars of self-transformation and growth for human beings. And I'll just say that in the end, life is one path in a sense, and everything that's going on in our lives, good and not so good and somewhere in between, it's really a reflection of who we are, and it's a reflection of what we bring to life and what we're creating in our life, given our capacities, our mindset, our actions, our everything. Just everything that happens is like a dance between us and life. And so it's good to dissect it into these areas, but you don't have to look at these separate areas necessarily. These are pointers, but know that everything that happens in our life it contains potential for self-transformation. Even one interaction, one action that we take, even the most insignificant thing, it contains like a seed for even like a very micro scale for self-transformation. And so really the journey of self-transformation is all encompassing, and you'll reach a point in your development once you've done enough work on yourself where the whole thing, like everything that's happening all the time, everything that you're experiencing it's like an expression of your own level of growth and self-transformation. And so yeah, I've dissected it, but really it's all one journey. Real big thanks for listening all the way through. This is The Great Updraft. I'm Ross. Come and tell me what your biggest area for self-transformation is. Which of these 7 pillars is the one where you think you can find the most self-transformation in? I'd love to know what that is, and I'd love to chat with you about it. And of course, do subscribe to my channel to stay up to date with future videos and publications. Stay tuned and take care.